Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested, and welcome back to Projections, where this week we're going to be talking augmented reality, because happening right now is this year's Augmented World Expo, although it's happening virtually as we're not able to actually go to a convention and meet in person. But it was at last year's Augmented World Expo that we got our first hands-on with the Nreal Light. These are a pair of AR glasses that have been in development, and very excitedly, earlier this month, they have launched the pre-orders for their developer kit. And Nreal very generously also was able to send us a pair of their developer kits. So yes, we're going hands-on with the Nreal Light developer kit, which is basically their $500 consumer AR glasses they're planning on shipping in the future, along with this compute unit, which is basically an Android phone equivalent running a Qualcomm 845 processor, and it's there for a tethered connection for AR glasses. But first of all, let's talk about the technology in AR headsets as it stands today, since there are a bunch that go into headsets ranging from the HoloLens to things like the Magic Leap, and also headsets like the Nreal Light. Now, Magic Leap and HoloLens use a display technology called waveguides. We've talked about them before, where they essentially are manufacturing special optics that pipe light into the actual lenses themselves to then display, while the Nreal Light uses a reliable type of display technology called bird bath optics. And it's called that because you essentially have two displays on the top here in this very svelte form factor. And as you can see, if you look through what look like a pair of sunglasses, the top part of the lenses here are masked off. That's where all the display and lensing optics are. So what you essentially have are two of these, I think, Sony displays, high pixel density, 1080p, 0.7-inch diagonal displays, OLED, micro displays, mounted here that aim the image downward. And then if you look at the inside, there's a beam splitter right here. It's right there. See, that's how it's angled diagonally right there. And so the image goes down and then hits it forward into what's essentially a one-way mirror. It's a combiner. And that's this lens here. And then, so light can pass through from the outside world to your eyes, as well as that projected image from these two displays into your eyes as well. They combine, and then you see these essential projections of these virtual objects in your field of view. Now, while there are a bunch of AR headsets that use similar bird bath optics style design, not all of them are created equal. It all boils down to not only the displays that are chosen, but also the actual physical design of the optics, what types of lenses are being used, the placements relative to each other, all of the calibration needed to make sure that the image you see is then a stereo image projected in real space with minimal artifacting, which image quality is something we'll definitely talk about in just a moment. Now, you also notice that these are basically fixed lenses, so there's no IPD adjustment, and Nreal says that this should be comfortable for anyone within like the 53 to 73 millimeter IPD distance. For someone like me with IPD in the high 60s, it was still very comfortable. I had no headaches, no discomfort looking at the images for a long period of time, and they do fit over my glasses. So I did use them both over my glasses, but I'd prefer to use them without my glasses. And for me, I could still see the images clearly, but if you do need a prescription, there are inserts that you can then get lenses for that magnetically attach so you can see it clearly if you need glasses. Let's talk a little bit more about the speeds and feeds real quickly, because they did manage to pack a lot of technology in this form factor. If you look at the outside, there are a bunch of sensors. So of course there is an IMU, an accelerometer inside, but you can very clearly see there are also 3 cameras on the outside. There are 2 black and white spatial cameras with a 120-degree field of view, and these look out into the world and do the SLAM mapping, do plane detection. You can see flat surfaces, walls, tables, your floor, as well as an RGB camera and video camera, photo camera. It's 5 megapixel right here. I can't tap into that right now with the applications, but the idea is then you can also do video capture, photo capture, or also hand tracking. There's an ambient light sensor right here as well. On the inside, there's a proximity sensor that turns on and off the display when you put it on. And then control-wise, there are 2 sets of controls on the underside of these arms. You have volume control as well as brightness control, and the brightness control doubles as a mode toggle to see the Android menu, the home screen, versus what's essentially the image piped out. And then there are also stereo microphones and stereo speakers, all of that built into this headset. There's no dedicated power here because power is run through this USB-C cable, which plugs into the compute unit. And that's what makes this similar to Magic Leap in the sense of it's a compute being something that you wear on your hip or your pocket, as opposed to something that's built into the headset that you wear, like with a HoloLens, where it's all on your head. I actually like this form factor a lot. I didn't find this cable get in the way. It only detaches over on the compute unit side, so it doesn't have a disconnect on the headset side, but makes the headset much lighter than it would be if they had all of the battery, all of the compute on the headset. This is 88 grams, which while most of the hardware is kind of front loaded because of the displays and the optics, still very comfortable to wear while using these demos. Also on the compute unit, you have micro USB for power. Although data, if you want to plug it into a computer to do your development, is over that USB-C cable, or you can do it over TCP/IP, over your local Wi-Fi network. And on the top here is the controller. So it's a 3-DOF controller, 3-axis. It's not positionally tracked. It's basically an accelerometer with your standard up, down, left, right swipe controls. And I think they chose that because then you would also have parity if you plug this into an Android phone running a Qualcomm processor, 845 or newer, select phones, because then you use that phone itself as the controller and use the accelerometer and the touchscreen on your phone to substitute for this controller. So out of the box, I want to reiterate that this is not the shipping consumer version. This is very clearly the developer kits, and so there's a lot of the full experience that we're not going to be able to test or talk about at this time. But what we can talk about are things like the image quality, the optics, the ergonomics, the general usability, what it feels like to wear this for long periods of time, as well as the basic demos that come preloaded with this developer kit. So let's first talk about image quality. And a caveat, the images that you're seeing right now are captured off of my phone and a handheld camera. And it's really tough to capture what you see through the lenses here because you're either focusing on the projected image and the exposing for the projected image, or you're capturing and trying to see the world around it. And there is a big difference because of the tinting required in the bird bath optic design. So you shouldn't judge what you see on screen right now as a full and accurate visual representation of the experience of actually wearing this headset, because the images that I saw and experienced were pretty great. That small OLED screen, high pixel density at 1080 meant that the images were vivid, they were crisp, they were sharp, the contrast was great. I could see fine details. I could imagine reading text without any problem when it's within that field of view. And these images felt and looked solid. The pixel fill was very good with this display. Now, contrast was also good, and most of my use was indoors, and there are optimal use conditions for displays like this. A normally lit room with overhead lights, whether in the daytime or nighttime, images are gonna look good. But stepping outdoors, I would try using this in my backyard or right across the street from my house, images start to get washed out. It was harder to see these projections under the luminance of the sky, even though it is tinted a little darker than using it indoors. I do think AR in the short term, especially with this type of optics, is going to be meant to be used indoors, looking at objects in your room, on your desk, as opposed to on the sidewalk or on the street. Now, field of view is something we should definitely talk about. It's because one of those attributes that we're always cognizant of when we're putting on whether a VR headset or an AR headset. We want to see these projected images in their entirety and not have them cropped off or cut off abruptly when we're looking at them. And every VR headset and every AR headset is going to have its limitations based on its optical design. The same applies here. Nreal is saying that their headset has about a 52-degree diagonal field of view, and much like our experience last year, that's good for certain types of imagery, certain types of content that you're looking at, and at certain distances. So if you're looking at an object that's like yay big and it's, maybe simulated 5 feet away from you, you're going to be able to see that entire object. But if you want to see something like a projected 100-inch flat screen, if you place it within 3 feet of you, you're not going to be able to see it. And there is a certain sweet spot in terms of the distance because the way these optics are designed, it doesn't solve for the convergence accommodation conflict. They get stereo 3D through convergence, through your left eye, right eye, seeing different images, and then your brain interpreting that as being 3D in a position in space, a couple of feet in front of you, but you can't with one eye shift focus as you would with a light field display, which is ways away, we think, in terms of being ready for consumers. So there really is a nice sweet spot for the type of images and for the menu options displayed here, for a lot of the demo objects, whether it's a hologram of a person singing or a model of a skull or an exploded diagram of a robot. Place, again, that 3 feet, 4 feet away from you on a tabletop surface, you're going to be able to see the entirety of that image. But once you get close, then your brain tries to focus in places that it may not be. And also, it does the same thing that Magic Leap did. If you get too close, there is a clipping plane where if you get maybe under a foot close, 10 inches close, the model then clips away and it won't show that image, which is a reasonable solution right now for these type of displays. Another thing I noticed is that the 60 hertz refresh rate of these panels, while it made the images look solid and locked in place as I was staring at them and kind of moved my head around them, if I shook my head really quickly, I did notice a little bit of smearing of the pixels as a visual artifact. And so image persistence, while good, is not really made for fast movement of the head. It's not the same type of artifacting you'd notice with like a DLP display, that rainbow effect when you move your head quickly, but it's definitely something noticeable here, and I think attributed to that 60 hertz refresh rate. But I gotta commend Nreal. I think they did a really great job on this optical design. And while there are, minor artifacts that you get with all birdbath type optics in terms of, very light ghosting in the periphery, and depending on how much bright light's coming in from the outside world, you see some mirroring of images below you, which you can kind of see in this video capture. As long as the content you have is clear in the center, and the content was very, very clear in these, my brain just didn't notice any of those artifacts. I was focused on the content, and the tracking was good enough that the content was really locked solid in place above my floor, above tables, and the slam was pretty good. I could walk into other rooms, come back, and the images were retained. Now, there weren't things like occlusion. I couldn't put my hand over the images and block that out or go around corners. And so that's something that maybe in software they can improve on in the future. Ergonomically, like I said, the 88 grams here did make this very comfortable. And it's worth pointing out that, the sunglasses style design is something that obviously they wanted to go for to make this socially acceptable, right? We want these AR glasses that you can wear in public that look like sunglasses or wouldn't look necessarily out of the ordinary. And that's an interesting design choice because, Microsoft with HoloLens is going completely the opposite way. They're targeting enterprise customers. They want people to know when you're wearing an AR headset, when you're wearing a HoloLens, you're wearing an AR headset, and that could be for comfort. So that, whether you're interacting with someone wearing a headset, oh, they're wearing something, they may not be looking at me, or they may have cameras on their headset, but also acknowledging that right now AR is being used not in the real world, being used in defined spaces where people are either in their work environments, at home, or doing things for industry, and you don't have to worry as much about that social acceptance. Now, this design, though, I think really lends itself to being something that you can take on and off easily. And that's, I think, the biggest benefit of this. It wasn't about this blending in and looking like sunglasses I would wear out at the park or the beach. We can't even go there right now during the lockdown. It's more about the ease of removal and ease of putting on, because these weren't glasses that I found myself wearing all day long. I tried, leaving them on, eating lunch, trying to interact with my family while also running through these demos. That wasn't really working. It was something that I was keeping in the office, maybe wearing in the living room to try a couple times. And it's something that very easy, again, super easy to put on, pop off, and I could see being tethered to a phone or a computer to then pipe that content to here. Discrete use like you would kind of use with, tetherless VR headset right now, not kind of the same persistence use that you would have with a wearable smartwatch or even your smartphone. And actually going for my smartphone, flipping through messages on my iPhone was something that was very, very usable with this design. I think that was something smart they did as well, where they didn't try to have these lenses, these optics, obscure your entire field of view. They weren't trying to go for that. There's this expectation that when you put this on, you can still see what's below you. Like I can still pull up my phone and look at it and read messages and then switch attention between the imagery on the display here or the imagery on my phone, kind of like you would looking at a TV and then going to your phone as well. This isn't going to be replacing smartphones. It's going to be used alongside smartphones. I think part of that also is because there is a dimming of the outside world through these lenses, and because they don't solve for convergence and accommodation, when you're focused on the content, you're focused on the content, not looking through and then reading your computer screen, reading through these lenses. It's more about the comfort of seeing the projected image while also being aware of your surroundings. That's what makes more sense to me for AR in the near term. Now let's talk about the content, because like I said at the top, this is not the consumer experience, and we don't know what Nreal's operating system is going to look like. What you do get right now out of the box is a small selection of demos. When you load it up, you have the option to change your settings for brightness and volume, and then launch into either a loop of demos, which you can see right now. It cycles through some examples of what tabletop gaming could look like, what miniature building could look like, what 3D model viewing could look like, or holographic projections of captured imagery could look like, or a projected flat screen tied to your wall. Those are examples. They also had a few demos of things like a cat running around, and you can use the 3DOF controller to point around, and the virtual cat would follow around and exist in that space and have a little bit of persistence. That was pretty neat. There was also a demo that put essentially what looked like a Stargate. It was very much a Stargate ripoff, a portal in the middle of your space, and it allowed you to really show the power of the spatial tracking, the SLAM of that portal being locked in. You could see the parallax if you moved along the left and right side of it, because behind the portal was this big space battle. And then you could also then yourself walk through the portal and see the space battle, as well as, again, being comfortable still acknowledging the real world around you. Now, Nreal also this month announced that they are developing their own content, and one of that is a kind of multiplayer tower defense game called Nreal Tower, and I was able to load that up, though not play with anyone else right now. Not many people have these, and that required a big tracking marker you print out and put on the table, and then you got to see this really cool landscape displayed in front of you with AI enemies that then you would point your 3DOF controller and fire at. And while the game itself wasn't complete because I wasn't really playing the full multiplayer experience, I used that as an opportunity once again to examine that landscape, examine the 3D geometry detail. And I think the Qualcomm 845 processor can do a really good job of rendering really detailed environments. It reminded me a lot of Lucky's Tale for the Oculus when that first launched, that type of visual style. And I do think a lot of developers, when they're making their Android games for AR glasses, will maybe lend themselves toward that style. It's pretty cool to see that demo. Now, again, there's so many things that we don't know. We're not able to test yet. Things like hand tracking, will the field of view of these external cameras be good enough to do skeletal modeling? Because I do want positional interaction, not just the 3DoF controller. I think that's suitable for media playing, but if you want real interaction with these objects, I'm gonna want something else. And speaking of controllers, there's Bluetooth, so will I be able to pair like a gamepad, play gamepad games with this? What their OS will look like. A lot of Magic Leap's resources was put into developing their Lumens OS, which was a full skin, an AR skin on top of Android. And I don't know what Nreal's plans are for that yet, but I do think that's kind of essential for the consumer space to make it easy for consumers to browse through applications, to sideload, to configure their settings, and to also feel like there is a persistent, interface around you. And we don't know what the killer apps will be for AR. There's such a wide spectrum of AR technologies and AR experiences, and I do think for experience that this headset provides, I would love to see an easy way to display 3D models. Some of the most compelling parts of the demo experience here was being able to walk around 3D models. I'd love to be able to download things, OBJ files from the internet, something skinned, something textured, be able to load it in quickly, throw it up, have it locked into space, and then be able to actually examine it and be able to scale it up and down. I think that would be a really neat kind of killer app for productivity. And speaking of which, I really would love the ability to mirror, a desktop, mirror my PC or a Mac OS desktop, and have that not just locked into the headset, but locked into space, floating in front of you. I think that would be an immediate, easy way to take advantage of these glasses. Because the real question is, will developers support this? And I do think there's potential in this technology for this to be compelling, and the price point they're going for at $500 for users will make adoption more easier, but will developers spend months and months working on games, and will games be enough to be a killer application for people to pick this up and play for more than just that first time and not sit in the drawer? All these are questions to be answered as Nreal moves toward their consumer launch, hopefully sooner than later, but this is super intriguing, and I can't wait to have more applications to sideload on here to test out. And we'll be sharing those experiences with you guys in the future for sure. So thanks for watching. If you have questions about the Nreal Light, things you'd like me to try out, please post them in the comments below. I want to thank Nreal for sending this because it's super interesting, and I can't wait for more people to get their hands on them, and so developers as well to make that content. Thanks for watching again, and I'll see you next time.